Okay, so let's try that again. Welcome everyone to the launch of GPSSample. My name is Amber Dismer, and I'm a health scientist / GIS specialist at CDC, and I work in the Global Public Health Emergencies branch. And we are so excited because GPSSample is an Android application for conducting random sampling in the field. This is our global beta launch. So we're super excited to be with you today. We have some participants in the room, and then we also have people on the line. Just to note, we are recording this, and as we go along, I'm jumping, but as we go along, if you have questions, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. We have several of our team members are monitoring and will be answering your questions live. Okay, so here is our agenda for the day. Or for the time period. First, we'll do introductions, we'll present these slides, but what you're really excited about is this live demo of GPSSample, where we create the application and a configuration file. We also have a piece where we're going to show you videos from the field, and then a summary of where we are with GPSSample, next steps, and questions and answers. All right, so I think I'm going to turn it over to Brian, my colleague, to introduce GTRI first.
How's everybody doing? So on the GTRI team, we have Megan Denham, who is our project director, Deanna King, who is the program manager, Russell Mitchell, who is one of our developers. All of them are part of the Health Emerging and Advanced Technologies division. And I'm Brian Parise. I am in the Advanced Computing and Artificial Intelligence division at GTRI, and I'm also one of the developers.
Thanks so much, Brian. On the CDC side, we have myself, also Louis Rosenkrantz, Ben Nygren, Joel Adegoke, and Monica Shaw, who are all part of the Global Immunization Division, and Amy Lang, who's part of the Geospatial Research Analysis and Services Program. And as you can see, this is a cross-cutting group of people across CDC, as there's wide interest in GPSSample. Okay. So what exactly is it? I know you're all here, but why? Well, GPSSample is an Android mobile application that's helping you to facilitate rapid sampling. And I've worked in public health for 11 years. And in this time period, this is what we've really needed. So that when you're going out and doing surveys, coverage surveys, or any kind of surveys, it allows you really to be able to do more faster and efficient sampling in the field. We've designed this specifically for low resource settings and as a free tool. So here is the bottom line up front. A lot of times to achieve the 2018 World Health Organization coverage survey guidelines for routine immunizations, you could go out to the field and within a cluster, map and list all of the households. When you're doing this, you're also gaining information about eligibility of each household. That's this first picture here. So GPSSample allows you to map and list households, to synchronize all of this data on one device, and have the supervisor or admin just press a button to rapidly generate the sample and then assign the teams. Before, this work usually, it took you went to the field and you mapped and listed all of the households. You sent the data to a server, a statistician at a different location, potentially Geneva, potentially Atlanta, potentially the district capital, would draw that sample and send it back to you. And if you were in an area that was very remote without Wi-Fi, this delay between being able to draw that sample, if you wanted to do mapping and listing process, would take a few weeks. So this is really why we're here, to talk about this part of GPSSample. So this all will be able to happen offline. So I just put up a map here of like how you would go about generating the household data for a cluster. We think that GPSSample is really useful for these use cases here: outbreak investigations, program monitoring, coverage surveys, humanitarian emergencies, also demographic surveys. In the map, you can see that the purple squares are digitized structures. So GPSSample allows you also to add digitized information in advance. So you can navigate to those digitized structures. You can conduct a census of those households, make sure that if there's new imagery or new data that wasn't collected in advance, you could enumerate those households, and then again, select the households needed for the full coverage survey or full directly in the field. We think that there's also these additional applications for GPSSample. So this includes like non-survey necessarily applications. So microcensus, being able to geo-enable microplanning, because while you're out in the field collecting data, you can also collect points of interest. These points of interest could be where the vaccine posts that you don't have identified yet, or where are the nutrition sites or wells or additional features. We think this is really interesting and applicable to other avenues as well. So not just public health, but also WASH and zoonotic diseases. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Thank you. So our app itself is role-based. So there's 4 basic roles that you can be inside of the application. You can be the admin, which allows you to set up configurations. And technically, the admin can do everything everybody else can do as well. The supervisor is the person that will be out in the field that defines teams, manages the field work itself, creates the actual sampling, and then reviews the data that's being returned from the enumerators or the data collectors. The enumerators are people that go out and do census surveys and collect information about the area that you guys are in. And ultimately, the data collector is the person that goes out and actually conducts the surveys based off of the sampling and based off of the selected household. So as you can see, there's basically 9 pieces of functionality that the app can do. The admin can do all of them. The supervisor can draw teams, enumerate the area, draw the sample itself, and can also act as either an enumerator or a data collector. The enumerator themselves can enumerate an area and then can collect data from the households, and the data collector again is the person that goes out to those households and then collects survey data. So the way that our application kind of works is based off of sending data between phones, and the way we're doing it is by creating what's called a local only hotspot. So essentially, we turn either the admin's phone or a supervisor's phone into a Wi-Fi hotspot that does not need internet, and it only can communicate locally. All right. So the way that we send the hotspot ID and the username and password to log into the hotspot is through the QR code. And so what ends up happening on the enumerator phone, you scan the QR code and the connection happens automatically, and the data transfer happens automatically as well. So for the enumeration, the flow of this basically is the admin creates the configuration, uses the QR code to then send the data to the supervisor, who then goes out in the field. Once the supervisor is out in the field, again, a QR code is created. The supervisor's phone turns into a hotspot. The enumerator scans the QR code and then gets the configuration that was sent to the supervisor by the admin. The enumerator can then go off into the field and collect survey data. And then when they return, the supervisor creates a second QR code that allows the enumerator to send data back up to the supervisor's phone. And so what ends up happening is you can send multiple people out, and then everybody can coalesce all their data back onto a single device. And then vice versa, the supervisor can then send all of the collected data to the admin. And once the admin has the data, that can be uploaded to a cloud, that can be saved to a local file system on a computer, or ultimately, if we get to the point where we can make a server, we can have this data uploaded to a server as well. So one of the main roles for the supervisor is creating the sample. So once you have your enumeration area and you have all that census data, and you've selected the sampling method you want to use, it's as simple as hitting the sample button, and we randomly select based on the criteria that you had set up inside of the configuration. We downsample all of the data collected by the enumerators, such that when the data collectors go out in the field, they're not going to every single house. They're going to this downsampled set of houses. They also create teams. And so they can assign certain areas of the enumeration area to different teams. And so those teams can go off and not have to do the entire area, but only do sections of it. Now, once the data collector is out in the field, it's the same process almost as the enumerator. The supervisor creates a QR code. The data collector scans that QR code, goes off into the field, goes to the selected houses that they've been assigned, and then actually conduct a survey. So what the app allows us to do is bounce out of the app and go into a survey tool like ODK, and we mark what survey is from what household that you selected inside of GPSSample, so you can tie the survey you conducted to the household that was selected inside the app after you've collected all the data back. Once you're done with that, you return back to the supervisor. Supervisor creates a QR code. You scan the code, and then the phone will transfer your data up to the supervisor. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the supervisor will have all of the data that was collected by the enumerators and the data collectors. And then from there, again, it can go to an admin or be saved off to an external source. So as I said, the survey data itself is not handled by GPSSample, but is handled by another survey tool like ODK. And so that process is along however that tool works. So like ODK, for example, has a server that you can upload the ODK survey to that's external to us. But we have a tag inside of that data such that you can tie that back to the data you collected using GPSSample. GPSSample itself uses JSON to save out the data, and we store the data locally inside of a database as well. And so you have the ability to export that file. You have the ability to also pull the data out of the local database as well. Okay.
Oh yeah, we're just gonna make one change here in the room for viewing. Oh, that's actually better. Perfect. Okay, Russell, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so what Russell's going to do is set up the configuration and acting as an administrator. So the first thing he's going to do is create an account. The account creation is pretty simple. You put in your name, you put in a PIN that you'll remember. Obviously, re-enter the PIN, and then a forget PIN answer, such that if you do forget your PIN, you can use this to get the PIN back. Once you've created your account, you'll sign in using that PIN, and then you can create configuration. So the admin has the add button up in the far right. The other roles, the supervisor, the data collector, and the enumerator do not. They can only get the configuration from an admin. So we have the ability to set whatever units of measurement you want, the date or time format that you need, and the desired GPS precision to allow you to figure out whether or not you're close enough to a household. Okay, so now what Russell is going to do is create the enumeration area that we're going to use for the study. So by clicking on the pencil, you're able to plop down points that will then create a geopolygon that says that this is the enumeration area. You can enter in as many points as you want. It doesn't need to be 4, but it will create an enumeration area.
So there's one feature we wanted to point out back here. It's allow manual identification of locations. Typically, this is not a feature that we would use often, but if you think that you're in a very remote location, you could turn this on. This allows you to tap on the actual map and add a household. If this is not checked, which we assume the majority of the surveys would not check this, it only allows you to add a household if you're physically present at the location. So this is the difference, and the admin has the ability to allow or disallow this feature.
So what Russell's doing now is he's going to create a study name. As I mentioned before, you can choose different sampling methods, and those sampling methods are what we use to create the downsampled data that the data collector goes off and uses. From here, you'll set the number of households you want to use inside of that enumeration area. So if you collected 100 households and you selected 15, the algorithm will then randomly select 15 inside of the sampling method criteria that you'd selected. So we're starting to add some field names. So there's different types of fields that you can add here. The first one is just a cluster ID, and it'll be a numeric. And so you can select whether or not it's an integer or whether or not it is, you can put in decimal points. The next field that he's going to enter in is a checkbox. The checkbox allows you to set a list of things that you can that will show up as a selectable item inside of the field when you go out and use the study for collecting enumeration data. Next, Russell is entering in a date, and we have a field type of date such that when you select this field, you'll see the standard calendar pop up, and you can select date and or time. The next field he's going to be entering in is a dropdown. So the difference between a dropdown and a checkbox is that a checkbox will allow you to select more than one. The dropdown will only allow you to choose a single item from the dropdown. The next field he'll be entering in is a text field, and it'll show up as an editable text box where you can type in text yourself. If you notice, he selected the personally identifiable information box. That is a marker that we use to indicate that this field is PII. Our system, the database itself is encrypted, and the transfer of the configurations and the JSON file, even when you save it out to your local file system or upload it, is also encrypted. The next two boxes he's entering in are just numeric values that are integers. So the difference between that and a normal text box is when you select those items, the number pad comes up instead of the standard keyboard. Now, Russell clicked the begin field block, and essentially what this means is that you can create subsections of sets of collectible data that's repeatable. So if he's collecting the total number of children under the ages 12 to 23, the next section, he'll collect that for each one of the children that are in the household that meet that criteria. Now, once he's done creating the field block, he'll save and end, and then that creates a subsection of the field collectible data that is repeatable. And so what Russell's doing now is he's going back into the survey. He's going to add rules to the study. What the rules basically do is aid in the down selection and criteria for doing the random sampling. So the random sampling applies what are called filters. Filters are made up of chains of rules, and that helps down select the data before the random sampling occurs. Now, once a rule is created, you can create a filter, and again, a filter is a combination of rules. For here, we just have one rule, so the filter will only apply that one condition. All right. Once you're in this state, you've created a configuration, and now it can be exported to the supervisor using the QR code technology. So now we're going to move on to showing a field video of using the rest of the system out in the field.
Great. And that was just the QR code. Okay, so. One second. Should be Windows Media Player. You guys can't see it in the room. Okay, so here we go. Just a note that we are not professional videographers, but we're very excited to share this with you today. Except it doesn't look like the sound is happening. One second. Share sound. Share. Today we're doing a household survey, an Atlanta vaccination coverage survey. We're mapping and listing all of the households in this cluster, and we're asking for eligibility criteria if there is a child ages 12 to 23 months. At the very end, all of the data will be synchronized with the supervisor's device, and then the supervisor will draw a sample. Only the households that have kids ages 12 to 23 months are eligible for that sample, but we don't know that unless we go to the field and find out. That's what we're here to do today. Hi, I'm Amber, and I'm the admin for this coverage survey in Atlanta.
Hi, I'm Louie, and I'm a supervisor for the survey.
Already recorded and established a configuration. It's this coverage survey. If I tap on it, you can see here that it has the clusters and it has the name of the Atlanta coverage survey here. So I'm going to export the entire configuration to Louie. I'm going to press export and then choose the QR code method. All right, so it's ready. And now Louie, over in his screen,
Going to hit import configuration. And then I have the option of QR code and file system. I'll hit QR code.
so he'll hover over mine, and the devices are close to each other.
Now click on the coverage survey, and you can see I'll scroll all the way down, and we have the coverage survey imported. Okay, I'm going to create my cluster 1 teams by hitting the plus sign here. I enter the team name, team 1. Now I'm going to scroll in and then hit the edit sign. So now I'm going to create the first cluster area. And now I'm creating the team 2 cluster area. Alright, so now I'm going to send the team 1 configuration to the enumerator. Click on team 1, click on upload and QR code.
And I'm John, the enumerator for Team 1. We come to the home screen and click Import Configuration, then QR code. Then I can scan the supervisor's QR code, say yes to connect to the device, and that has imported the Team 1 cluster. While the screen was initially black, this meant that I needed to connect to Wi-Fi. Once connected to Wi-Fi, you can see the enumeration area appears.
Now I'm sending the configuration to team 2. Again, I'll hit upload, QR code. It's created the QR code. And then we'll repeat the same process for each of the teams for the configuration.
So there's only 2 times you need Wi-Fi. The first is at the beginning of the study, when the admin sends the data to the supervisor, and the supervisor sends the data to the data collectors, so that the maps can be downloaded from the internet. So when you're out in the field collecting data, you don't need Wi-Fi. The second time you do need Wi-Fi, though, is at the very end. You've completed the household survey and you came back to an area that has Wi-Fi. You need to send the ODK data up to the servers, so you need Wi-Fi there, and you can also export the GPSSample data set.
All right, now we are at a household that is a single family residence. So we're going to practice adding a single family household in GPSSample. In order to do that, you've got 2 buttons to choose from. One button, the location marker with the plus sign, is how you add a point of interest that you can take a photo of and document. The other one is the one we want to use, where we can add a household. So here, we'll click Add Household, use our current location since we're currently at the residence, and it is a single family unit, not a multifamily location. So we hit No. We can enter the subaddress as the address number or some unique identifier, and then we can reduce this additional information. For the cluster ID, I'm in Team 2. We'll say my name is Marie for now. And for the date today, we'll enter today's date. This structure does contain households, so we select yes. And let's say that I spoke with the resident to get their information. And the head of a household was Steph R. Once we have the head of household, we can enter the number of household residents, we'll say 3 here, and the total number of children between the ages of 12 and 23 months, which is 1. Then for that child, we'll get this information to enter the child's name, in this case it's Dozer, and the age of the child in months, 15. Once we have all of that, we can hit save, and we have a complete data set here. So we'll save it there, and we'll see that the household has appeared and is highlighted as green, showing that the data is complete. Sometimes you may want to take a photo of the household, and if you have the owner's consent, you can do that in the GPSSample app. So here, you can select your household by clicking on the house or the line ID and clicking the camera button at the top. And then once you have that, you can snap a photo of the residence. For this new household, I'll create another household ID using their number, and I can reduce the size of this top information here. I've already completed the information for team 1. John is the enumerator. The structure is a household, so I select yes here. And again, I'm speaking with a resident. I'll fill out this head of household's name. And in this household, there's 4 residents, of which 2 are children aged 12 to 23 months. And now I can save this once again, saying complete or incomplete. Incomplete. But in this case, it's incomplete because we did not have all of the information. Adding a note about why. And then we can save this, and we will be able to come back later. Now you can see that there's a household highlighted in red, showing that it is incomplete next to another household. Here we are at a structure that is a multi-family household. So there are multiple families living here. So in that case, we will create a multi-family location in our GPSSample. So we follow the same method of adding a household, and then we'll use our current location. This one is a multi-family location, so we select yes. And then we put plus for each individual family. You can see here that the multi-family structure appears as an icon that looks somewhat like an apartment building or a house. And here we can look into the data for that household. So I've already populated the data, and for the third apartment, for instance, 1203, we have all of our standard enumeration information about the enumerator, the date, and that this residence contains families. And then in this case, there are 5 household residents, including 2 children between the ages of 12 and 23. And then you can see that we're able to include data on each of those children below, including their name and their age in months. Then we hit save as usual and have our information.
Now I'm going to collect a point of interest. This is a way that the enumerators can easily contextualize the area and help find their way back to the households. So the point of interest is a church right here. And so I'm going to use this icon to add this point of interest. And I'll tap on the photograph button and take a photograph, click OK, and provide a description, church, and hit save.
My name's Andrea. I'm an enumerator from Team 1, and I just finished enumerating all of the houses in my area. Here is the map, and getting ready to send this data to my supervisor.
Today I'm standing in for Louie. I got a promotion. So today I'm going to be the one taking the data from the enumerator. So Andrea with Team 1 will pass the field data over to the supervisor. In order to do so, in the GPSSample app, I will click Import Field Data and select QR code to generate a QR code.
Then as an enumerator on my side, I'm going to hit the up arrow to upload my data, hit QR code, and read and voila, data sent.
Data has been transferred. I can see Team 1's enumerated data in our file. In order to see that, we click the cluster 1 and enumeration and go to the team that imported the data, in this case Team 1. And we can see all of the households that were enumerated here. Now it's time to generate a sample. We use the enumerated data provided by our team members, and we will present the data collecting 15 households in this sample. That was a rule that was established by the admin, and as a supervisor, I cannot change that. Next, you select Generate Sample, and this should create that sample of 15 households out of the total enumerated area. Then you hit Next. On this screen, you hit plus to add a team. Make sure to create a team name, in this case, Team 1, and then zoom into your enumeration area where you've got the selected households, and you will select the pencil button to draw a certain area around those households. Once you circle those households, you should see them highlighted as your new enumeration area for Team 1, and then you can select Save. Now you can see that Team 1 has been created, and you're ready to go.
I am a data collector now, and I'm about to get data from my supervisor. He's going to send me the sublist so that I can go out and collect household data. I'm now going to import configuration from my supervisor. So I'm going to select QR code, and then my supervisor is going to export his QR code. And now I'm going to scan, and it'll take a moment to buffer. Okay, and now it's pulled up on my side, and the screen is just showing black because I'm not connected to Wi-Fi at the moment.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a data collector. After navigating to one of the sample households and confirming that it has a child between the ages of 12 and 23 months, I can click on the household and view that information on the Show Enumeration Info, and I'm going to launch the survey. You'll see that it shows up here, and it's going to load the form in ODK Collect. Once you've answered all the questions in the survey, you'll click Next, and a launch icon will appear. After clicking Launch, a unique ID will be created that's the same from the GPSSample. Saving a completed survey in GPSSample, the household will change from orange to purple.
And I'm out collecting data, but the members of the household are not home. So I'm going to mark this survey as incomplete. And so to mark this as incomplete, I'm going to select the household, select Mark as incomplete, check the incomplete box and indicate that nobody was home. And you can also add notes here. And I'm going to click Save. And you can see that it's orange, and this means that these are households that are incomplete.
We are field data collectors, and we've completed our day's work, and we are now going to transfer the data to the supervisor. We do that by clicking this and then export collection of data via QR code. And then we have to generate a QR code from the supervisor's device by hitting import via QR code. Once the QR code is generated on the supervisor's device, the data collector's device scans the QR code and the data is transferred. The way to confirm that the data has been transferred from the data collector's device to the supervisor's device is to looking at the screen on the data collector, in this case, the households that have been converted to purple, and confirming the same households on the supervisor's device have been also converted to purple.
I just repeated the same process as Ryan, and the upload of my data was successful, as you can see here. And you can see in orange is the house that I marked as incomplete.
So thank you very much. That was our video.
Today we're doing a household survey.
I have to stop it.
An Atlanta
It will
vaccination
continue.
coverage survey. We're mapping out all of the households in this cluster.
Oh no.
And we're asking
Okay.
for eligibility criteria if there is.
Let's just close that. Oops. Oops. But we're not done with the webinar. So 1 second. We do have a few more slides to share with you. Screen. Okay. Excellent. So next we wanted to say that this is actually an Android 8 Plus application. I'm realizing that this slide is for Brian, but I'll stay here because I'm the next one.
Yeah, so for the tech specs, we designed the app so it'll run on Android 8 and above. Really, we want to target Android 10 and above just because there's better Wi-Fi connectability and it's newer and we can take advantage of some of the newer technology. Under the hood, we use SQLite as the database. We use the database to store the data as it's being collected, as well as storing the configurations that get transferred from the supervisor or the admin phone down to an enumerator. As we discussed, all of the data that gets transferred is through a local-only hotspot. And so again, what that really means is that the supervisor or admin phone is the actual Wi-Fi hotspot. And so you don't need cell and you don't need external Wi-Fi to be able to use the system. The data itself is saved as JSON. JSON is a typical data format that web programs use a lot. And so we stick with that standard. As mentioned before, that JSON file is encrypted while it's being sent. And then if you export it, it's encrypted as well. We support geodata formats, GeoJSONs, which, same format, but a GeoJSON has geographic information in it. And we're using Mapbox as the mapping system. All the maps that you saw in video, they're all using the Mapbox SDK.
And we're really excited because we actually have this GitHub link. So we will share the slides after this, and both these slides and additional information about GPSSample can be found there. And this is where we're starting the GPSSample global community. So we also have a technical support email here that if you have any issues, once you have access to GPSSample, please feel free to email us. Okay, so what are our next steps? If you've been attending this webinar and maybe you've gone to the Play Store and searched for GPSSample, you'll see it's not yet there. This is because we have a little bit more hardening to do, but we expect to and plan to reach this. To have this be in the Google Play Store in the next few weeks, ideally November 5th. That is our plan. It will take a little bit longer to make this app available at CDC. So we're expecting 3 to 4 weeks after the Play Store that it will be available for CDC. It currently has cluster sampling and simple random sampling, but we know that strata sampling and subset sampling are also very much important. So those are 2 additional types of sampling that we'll be adding. And then numbers 4 and 5 are about the export of the data. So the number 4 is being able to export GPSSample data locally and writing a small computer program to allow you to unpackage it with password protection as appropriate on your computer without having to install additional software. This will be a contained small program. Brian already mentioned the server piece, but number 6 is really, we think that there's more features we want to add to enhance navigation back to those households that are selected to make sure you're really at the right place. Okay, so I did mention GitHub, but not all of us are developers. And so we are also planning to develop a wiki page. This will be very exciting and user-friendly. And then some of you might be joining us from abroad. If so, Brian and Megan will be at the AFINet conference in Mombasa, presenting on behalf of the GPSSample group and leading a pre-conference workshop on November 5th. If you're at the AFINet conference or you have colleagues that are going, we also will have a booth. So please stop by the booth. You'll be able to test out the GPSSample app on the phones there. And then we can't end without saying we are so excited to be to do more testing and piloting. We've been developing, but we haven't yet tested this in a full pilot setting. And then, as mentioned, our long-term vision is really to move this code to open source. So this year we'll be moving the code to open source and establishing a community of practice so that the code itself is maintained by a community of developers. So we're really excited, but we could not have done this work without everyone. There have been so many people, both on the WHO side at CDC, our Georgia Tech Research Institute colleagues who have been developing the application. This really was a part of CDC's CDC's data modernization initiative, but it is not a CDC-owned app. Again, I wanted to have a special call out for the Central Asian region because the field epidemiology training program residents did the first early international testing there. And also wanted to thank everyone here on this slide for being excellent in terms of contributing. And if I missed you, it was not by, it was an accident. So yes. Last, we wanted to thank you all for your participation and leave a sufficient amount of time for questions. So now we'll open it up for Q&A. So I will try to see. So we set this up as a panel or a webinar, but I'm going to try and figure out how to unmute people. Okay, so I'm seeing a few questions. Is this functional with Kobo and ONA? Not yet. So our next tool that we're interested in adding is Kobo, but because Kobo, ONA, and ODK all share the same XLS format, we're hoping that it will be easy to add additional tools as well. And Carolina, you asked any help desk at first? That's that email, the GPSSample help desk. You can also email either myself or Megan for additional support, but that is definitely what we're hoping for. Is there a way to? Okay, I think that there was a few folks that wanted to ask questions live, and I believe I can do that if you raise your hand again.
Amber, we have a few questions that people have typed in that we can put to you when you're ready.
Okay, perfect. So I answered that one. Okay, so Dana, you are, sorry, so not everyone can see this, but in the room, you're asking for a side-by-side comparison of GPSSample and other field apps. So this is something that we can look at. We've used both SW maps for navigation and Avenza maps for navigation. Actually, we've used a number of these apps. What we haven't looked at closely is this My Survey Solutions one, but we'll definitely do that to see these other tools as well. Go ahead, Louis.
So there was also a question from Nuruddin Suleiman Qadri. The question is, how do I get to edit or delete a block while setting up a configuration if a block was erroneously added?
Yep. Russell, do you want to demo that? Okay. This is, I can go. This is pretty easy to do. You tap on the map itself, and you can click on the cluster. And you can just press delete. It asks you a question, GPSSample does, do you want to delete this? And you say yes. Again, only the admin can do this. The supervisor can't delete an enumeration area.
Thanks. And Nuruddin also had another question. How are conditions handled while setting up a configuration? So for example, if, else, or cascades.
Yeah, so the cascading selects, I'm assuming you're asking for geographic data, or if there is a child under 5, making sure that, and you answer, for example, 3 kids, but the household only has 3 people, that doesn't make sense. Those are additional functionality we don't yet have in the GPSSample app. So we know about them, but they're not yet there. And this is because we're really hoping this is like, you're not doing this is very small form. So the objective is just to do the mapping and listing here and to do your longer household questionnaire in that other survey application. But we do recognize this, and we are planning, there are identified features for future builds.
Another question was from an anonymous attendee. Are the use cases and applicability for longitudinal studies? For example, if we want to revisit the same households or individuals for a 12-month follow-up, in other words, does the app allow for syncing of 2 or more time points?
So yes, you can export that configuration file with all of the data, and then you could load it onto a tablet 12 months from now. You could use the same sample that you had, or the beauty of GPSSample is you could select a new sample of kids. So you could definitely use it for follow-up across time. Again, you're doing the specific long household questionnaire in that other application, such as ODK. But yeah.
Okay, thanks. We have another question from Ashke. Is it possible to use satellite imagery as a base map?
Ooh. So this is an identified feature. So not yet is the answer. We definitely want this to be able to create your own map tiles and add them. But it is not yet to use high resolution satellite imagery. So it's not yet in the application.
Another question was from Christy Reed. Video was well done. As enumerator was uploading, he mentioned the screen was blank until connecting to Wi-Fi. Did he use the supervisor's local hotspot?
No. So that setting of the supervisor did have the local hotspot, but that setting of being able to connect to the internet through the supervisor's device or through an admin's device has been disabled by Brian and Russell. So you have to connect to like a specific Wi-Fi to download the Mapbox tiles. And that's not, that's actually a limitation of Mapbox. It's about Mapbox's tiles. So we think though that this still works with the flow, because typically you're setting up all the devices in one central location before you're going to the field. So your admin is setting up the study in advance, transferring to the supervisors. You're still in the same room, you're doing your training. The supervisors are connecting with each of the team members, and they're downloading the Mapbox data for their specific clusters. All in an area where there's Wi-Fi. Then they're going out to the field where there's no Wi-Fi.
Great. Okay, we have a question from Alan Hightower. Is it correct that GPSSample collects another GPS location when the interviewer returns to the household to begin the interview? This allows you to prove that the interviewers actually visited the household versus sitting under a tree.
Yeah, and so we are collecting that information, and that will be part of the data collection when you come back. So then you know that the person actually did what they said they were going to do.
So yes, we have a question in the room, and then we'll go back to those online.
All right. Thank you so much. This is so exciting. Congratulations for all the really hard work. Did you mention language capabilities? Is this going to be available in French, or can you upload other languages?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for this question. I forgot to mention this. Currently, we have this in 5 languages. So English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian. Although yes, and additional languages may be coming. If you're interested in us, please email and want to add another language. We'd love to add them. So yes, we're really excited. And a big thanks to our PAHO colleagues for helping us get there with the internationalization of languages.
Thanks. We have a question from Dale Rhoda. Is the admin phone a single point of failure? If it goes down, for example, gets dropped or dunked, can the team recover in a timely fashion?
Maybe I can answer this. So Dale, so there's a few ways to set the admin is the only one who can set up the study. But once the study is set up and transferred to the supervisor or supervisors, each of those supervisors has capacity. So it's the supervisor that's doing the sampling, and the data doesn't have to go all the way back to the admin in order to, if the admin's phone gets dropped in the ocean at that point, it's still okay. The data is still saved on the supervisor's devices and the enumerators. Also, what we didn't show you today is you could export the data as a configuration file and save this. This configuration file could be backed up on a file system such as like OneDrive, and that can be or Drive or Box or whatever you're using, and that can be re-added to a new device, basically, with an admin account with the correct permissions. Great question.
Thanks. We have a question from Kareem Bougma regarding clustering. How is a cluster defined? What are the criteria used? And at which moment of the process are the clusters selected?
Okay, so a lot of times in determining where to go, like what those clusters are, there's typically a survey protocol, and you've already identified like what a cluster is, and maybe you've worked with the Census Bureau of the area to have limits of those clusters, or maybe you're using a different type of spatial area to determine what the cluster is. So the cluster itself can be done in 2 ways. Maybe you have a paper map, and you can go ahead and use that paper map to digitize exactly what those limits of the cluster are. That's option 1. That's what Russell demonstrated today. Option 2 is you have this data in a geographic information system or GIS system already as a shapefile or a different type of spatial data set. It's really easy. You can do this in QGIS and Esri software at ArcGIS as well to export this as a GeoJSON. and just add it to GPS sample. Again, we didn't demo that part. In terms of which clusters you're actually selecting, typically that's done in advance with statisticians. So we did not build GPS sample for that piece. We built it for once you already know where the clusters are, then you can do it. You can use GPS sample. I think I fully answered that question. I think so. But please type in please ask another question if that generated more questions. So we've got a lot online. This is great. But I can't see them if I put them over there.
Okay, we have a question from Maria. Does the app enable selection of reserved households in addition to the initial target sample?
So currently, no. So if you had your 15 households that you selected initially, you wouldn't have additional households in the same spot. But this is why you saw one of the things we're thinking about is we didn't lock that ability to generate a new sample. It's something we are looking to test because ideally you only really want that those households to be drawn once for a cluster. Our understanding is that the reserve households are typically for when you need to redo or you need to go to a completely different cluster. And so in that case, you'd be doing the same process in a different cluster. But we didn't block the supervisor from pressing the generate sample again. And this is something we're going to be looking at in our field testing. Oh, can I pick one to answer? Okay, so there's a question from Olasoji. Can we use GPS sample to calculate sample size based on the size of the enumeration area? So if you're using the cluster-based sample method, you actually have three options. You could use the number of households, the percent of the households. So if you wanted to say, select 5% of all of the households in an area, you can do it that way. Or you could use, the third one is the percent of the population in the area. So maybe one of your fields is that you're collecting population data. You could say, please select 3% of the population, and it will select households with a total of 3% of the population. We didn't demo that, but it is in the app. In terms of, are we use the size? I think like that answers that question. We didn't have it based on like if the geographic size of the clusters are different. It's more based on the criteria within each of the that you would be collecting, mapping and listing. Are you able to assign the teams without drawing on the map? So no, but what you can do is you can draw the entire cluster. So you don't have to assign two teams to two separate areas. You can circle the whole cluster and say team 1, and you can circle the whole cluster and say team 2 and send those staff out. And that allows you to be able to navigate without having to determine in advance who is going to actually do the enumeration. Okay, what considerations and parameters are in place to ensure data protection?
So for that, as I mentioned earlier, the entire, it's called the sandbox, but where the app sits is encrypted, including the database. And then when you're transferring the data back in between phones and when you save the configuration out to the file system, that file is encrypted. So the entire JSON is encrypted during transfer and then also saving it out. The program that we're building will decrypt that file and then create CSVs out of it, or Excel, probably an Excel worksheet out of it. But while it's in that form, it's encrypted.
Great. Answer that. think I already answered some of these. Oh, from Angela, we didn't see a demo on the ODK linkage with the app. Actually in the video, so sorry, in the video, this was demoed. So Ryan was a data collector and he pressed launch survey on the inside the GPSSample app, and then it opened up another window and it had the ODK, it automatically opened ODK. So it didn't have like, you don't have to go out from GPSSample to the other app. It already opened ODK for him. And then you clicked on the form and you could, you can either put that household unique ID somewhere at the end or somewhere at the beginning. Typically, I know people put it at the beginning. Ryan described it as putting it at the end, but yes. And that is the same like long UUID that's in GPSSample. Once Ryan pressed save in that ODK form, it automatically takes you back to GPSSample. So that handshake between the two apps is already there. Okay. So Luke asked, do the data collectors have to be at the location of the sampled household in order to enter the data? Or can they collect data on paper and enter the data for a household? Oh, Ben, you're answering.
Oh, just there you go.
Okay. So they can answer later. That is that capacity of it depends on how the admin has set it up. So if the admin has established to allow for identification on a map, you could do it that way. I think the challenge, and that definitely is useful in areas where you don't have permission to collect GPS data, or tablets and devices can be seen and as like people want to attack you if you have these things. I think a challenge there could be how do you ensure you're marking the data for the right household? But if you had I can imagine if you had for example, a very well enumerated like IDP camp or refugee camp that already had like which block and list you were in, that would be a way that you could just add data without actually going and being there with the tablets and devices in the field. That one?
Is the export a two-way synchronization between both devices? Yes. So the export, when you're sending the data, you're establishing a Wi-Fi connection between the supervisor or admin's device and your device. And so the data is getting transferred in one direction. When you first start, the data collector gets data from the supervisor's phone. And then when you're done and you upload, it goes the other way around, where you're doing the same process. There's a QR code and you're scanning it, but when you're done, the data is going from your device up to the supervisor. And when you start, it goes from the supervisor down to the data collector.
Okay. And Karim Buga asked the example you mentioned, the example you presented is for single individual participant survey, i.e. children 12 to 23 months. In the case of multiple participant groups, including the household itself, we usually census all the households in the cluster, then sample the desired number of households by systematic random sampling. We then census those selected household members to identify eligible individuals. Then we simple random select the desired number of each individual participant group. Is that what you were referring to as the upcoming next stage of subsampling? I think that would be the subsets, being able to have both like selecting the households. Maybe you do the mapping and listing, and you have selected the households, and maybe you have two different things. You want to survey pregnant women, and you want to do you would like to have these kids under 5. And some households have both a kid under 5 and a pregnant woman. And some households only have one of those. The subset would allow you to say, our primary survey or one of the surveys is looking for kids that are under 5. The other survey is looking for pregnant women. these might be the same, these might be overlapping and they might not. So that is what we mean by the subset sampling method. The strata is more, this is if you have clusters that have a specifically something that's unique, like you have urban and rural clusters. So those, you would have two different strata. So maybe in urban clusters, you're only interested in, your sampling methodology has you taking 10 households, and maybe in those rural areas, you're doing 15. So this is what we're currently thinking about. Yeah, this is great to see so many questions. Okay, so we answered that one. Oh. Okay, so Dana asked, can you review what you mean by cluster sampling and random sampling? Yes. Okay, so cluster sampling, I mean, let's go with simple random sampling first. This simple random sampling, you could have multiple clusters, potentially 30 clusters, 25, however many is decided. You go out and you map and list everything in all of those clusters, and then you come back to one central location with all of the teams. And you select from across all of those 30 clusters. So you might get some clusters with 8 households selected in them. You might have others with 15. It's one giant list. That's what we mean by the simple random sampling. Also, again, using the criteria that the admin has set up, the eligibility criteria. The cluster-based sampling is simple random sampling within the cluster. So the sampling piece that is only happening at like cluster 1. You're mapping and listing all of the households in cluster 1. And when you press that sample button, it's only drawing the list of households from cluster 1. When you go to cluster 2, it's not considering data from cluster 1. If you want to segment within the area, you could decide, like the supervisor could just draw a team for team 1, for example, and the participants go, the team members go to this area of segment 1, and you do the mapping and listing in segment 1 area. So that's how you can, well, we're not specifically designed for segmentation. That's how you could also do a segmentation. Okay. Wycliffe, do you want to answer that one, or should I?
How do you resolve households map? Oh,
That's a good question.
how do you resolve households mapped by multiple teams in the scenario of all teams in the cluster? So right now, we sort of expect that the individual teams don't overlap, but when they do, or also correct me if I'm wrong, the last team that uploads the data basically overwrites what was there. The thought that we have kind of moving forward is coming up with some scheme to be able to identify that happened and let the supervisor decide which data is correct.
We've answered some of these. Ola Soji also asked, is it possible to export the EA data from another system? I think you also, so we can export the enumeration area data from GPSSample, and it will be able to be viewed with some assistance in using this small computer program. We're also in as CSV files, and those are things that you can then use in or bring into your GIS system. You can also import those GeoJSONs directly into this GPSSample application. So if you've created boundaries or clusters, you're not losing the data when you're mapping them in GPSSample. How accurate is the enumeration area determination on this app? So the limits you're asking. This is why we recommend, like, zooming in. If you're drawing it on the app, zooming in and identifying the boundaries at the street level or at areas that make sense that you can see. But if you have a big concern about this, you can do this digitization piece in a different GIS software in advance. We didn't restrict a related point is we didn't restrict the enumerators from being able to identify and add a household slightly outside of their area. Because we know that oftentimes you might be just outside, maybe the building crosses the enumeration area boundary, and you don't know that in advance. Or I mean, you might be able to, but we didn't restrict that. So you can add households that are slightly outside of there's no like distance setting currently in the app to restrict adding households outside. Okay, so we answered that. We answered that already. Whoops. I think we answered that. Are you able to assign the teams without drawing on the map? We did answer that already. Okay, from Nurdin. Our understanding of an admin in the context of the application is someone who has super roles. However, we say in one of your slides that the admin only sets the configurations. Does it mean that the admin cannot provide support should the supervisor or any other user encounter an error? You want to take this?
Sure. So the admin can do everything and all of the other roles can do. So an admin can act as an enumerator, as a data collector, or a supervisor. So as an admin, you're able to literally do everything: create the configuration, use the configuration you created as a supervisor, or use the configuration you created as a data collector as well. So the admin does have the ability to do everything.
Yeah, I think I did that. Okay, so Dale, you also asked, will there be upcoming technical sessions and materials to help people who want to administer projects, such as like sending in the digital cluster boundaries, getting the JSON files out? Yes, the answer is yes. We also will, so that's what the part of the AFINet part is. But if you can't make it to AFINet, we do have a large operational guide PDF, oh my goodness, document that's coming with screenshots of everything. I think technical sessions is a great idea. We haven't thought about that yet in terms of like live Q&A and technical sessions, but I think that's a great idea. Okay. Can areas or cluster-shaped boundary portions be coded to indicate if one or both sides of the street are included in an area? I'm wondering if you can explain that a little bit more. You could draw the boundary with it, like through the street. So if you had a street, sorry, I'll speak this way. So if you if this was the street, but you wanted to make sure that structures on this side of the street, the right side of the street, all belong to one cluster, and structures on the left side of the street belong to a different cluster, you can do that as well. That would just be setting up two different clusters, or two different teams within the cluster. So I think that's what you mean. If not, please please ask the question again. Okay, so Christy asked, can you elaborate on a previous answer regarding assigning more than one data collector to the same area instead of making out separate areas for each data collector? So in the setting of data collectors all assigned to the same area, how do the data collectors avoid going to the same households? So you could either create two separate teams, and team one gets for the data collector gets their list of team one. So they're not seeing all of the data, they're just seeing the households for team one. Team two only gets the households they're going to. They don't see all of the data. Or, you know, typically this isn't that many households. What we didn't show you was a nice list of just the selected households with the head of the household name and ID. And that is also something that we are that would be helpful in determining this. So Did you want to add anything? Okay. Oh, can you speak to why this team formed and started working on GPS sampling? What challenges were we facing? And is it within your mandate to support these multiple sample designs and practices that might not be exactly what is used at CDC? How much longer will you be adding features? Great questions. All right, so so this is actually like a long project that we had started with a few years back, I'd say. The application itself used to be on PDAs, and then it got moved to Android, but it wasn't like fully functional with all the features. So this is really the we've tried a few times, but this is the first successful application we've developed. And we're doing this because we saw that there's a global gap in people being able to do the mapping and listing and field collection of field sampling. And we think that by providing this tool, it's really gonna help to fill this gap. We're hoping that teams will be able to do this methodology, but that it'll shorten the time you're actually in the field, because you don't have to go to the field, do the mapping and listing, come back from the field, wait for a week or two, and then still try and figure out where those households are. You know, CDC, we partnered with GTRI because they're an excellent technical partner. And our funding for this and project support is currently through the end of fiscal year 2024, which is September of 2024. And we're really looking for the global community to and to connect with you all as part of the global community, because we recognize that it takes CDC a bit, like we don't want to be the ones owning, like we're not owning this app. We really want this to be open source and maintained by the global community so that additional folks can be making investments and enhancements. So that's why we did this app. And it's really for our like field partners, for all of you. So we're hoping that we, yes. Ben. Yeah, Ben.
Hi, this is Ben Nygren, epidemiologist in Global Immunization Division. In terms of the origins of this project, I just want to really acknowledge some of the pioneering work also by Anatoly Frolov and Adam Walkin, going back to the Windows Mobile's days, really proving this concept and how valuable it could be. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, so another question from Nuruddin is, how does this application address interventions in security compromised areas, considering the fact that you need to transfer data via QR code in close proximity or range? Oh, do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so we think that, you know, each role you could export as a configuration and send that file over internet with, and it's encrypted. And what you could, the advantage of the QR code in those settings is that you have to physically be close to the phone that's doing the local hotspot. So the supervisor has to be in the same room, the same specific area. The supervisor confirms that the enumerator is the one that they want to connect to it with. You can't just randomly use this QR code from a different location and get to the data. Okay. So, okay, so I think that this is about all of the time we have today. I know there's a few more questions in the chat, but please feel free to reach out to us as a either the GPS sample technical team or to myself or Megan. And we're sorry, what? Yes, but thank you so much for attending this global launch of GPSSample. And again, please look for it soon, in the next few weeks on the GPSSample, on the Google Play Store. I'm not renaming the Google Play Store today. So thank you so much. Okay, and for those of you in the room, we did bring some tablets if you're like interested in testing. One of them has a phone that already has all of the data that we had loaded. So you are welcome to test it out if you want to. They're in the back. So thank you, and thank you so much. I don't think I ended that up here.